Welcome to the channel and welcome to this game of Warhammer 40,000 4th edition Combat Patrol. Yes, you heard me, 4th edition. So if you're hoping to see a battle report from 10th edition, which is the current version of 40,000 at time of filming, with 11th edition recently being announced, yeah, this video possibly not for you. However, if you fancy a trip down memory lane and a little bit of nostalgia, or you're interested in seeing what some of the earlier versions of 40k played like if you never got to play them, this video might be for you. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Few disclaimers, or rather quite a lot of disclaimers. I have reverted to my digital camcorder because the battery lasts longer than my really knackered old iPhone that I have to plug an external microphone into. And yeah, so I'm hoping it will just make it a little bit easier to film on a practical level. But also, those of you who know me know I'm quite softly spoken, so I need to try to project so that the built-in microphone on the camcorder actually picks up my voice. Next disclaimer, first time filming like this in a very long time, so chances are I'm going to be pretty rusty, so I'll do my best. And next disclaimer, first time filming in the new house, and the lighting in this room is really bad. I do need to do something about it at some point. So lighting may not be greatest. So assuming that hasn't put you off, let's go into why 4th edition. Well, let me start by telling you why Warhammer 40,000 4th edition is the best edition of Warhammer 40,000. It isn't. It's 8th edition is the best version of Warhammer 40,000. Anyway, I had originally intended to do this series using Warhammer 40,000 3rd edition. The reason being, 3rd edition was groundbreaking and it set the scene rules-wise for many of the editions that followed it. So 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th were all very, very similar. They're built on the same core mechanics that were founded in 3rd edition. However, 3rd edition, because it was the first one in that series, had its issues. Some people say it was the most balanced version ever done because, like they've done with a couple of the more recent mainstream Warhammer games, they released an index at the back of the rulebook for every single faction, and some people say it's the most balanced the game's ever been, up until they then released the indexes for 8th edition. But anyway, by the time people were playing 3rd edition, they realised there's a few issues with the rules, so they tidied it up and brought out 4th edition, which basically tidied up a lot of the rules. And 4th edition is also the edition where we start to see some of the miniatures that we all know and love and are still used currently today. Also, in my collection, I've got models ranging from 3rd edition right the way through to 10th. So if you're hoping for if you're a 3rd and 4th edition purist and you want to see everything on 25mm bases, that's not going to happen. Apologies. I will be using, in this game for example, I will be using 8th edition Plague Marines on 32mm bases. And I'm happy with that because in the 4th edition rulebook it does explicitly say the bases that come with the models are the minimum size. You can use larger, but you must not use smaller. So I'm happy with that. I can live with that with my own conscience. But also 4th edition, the codexes are a lot more streamlined. The codexes in 3rd edition, codices, some of them were a little bit janky to the point where they released 2 different versions. So for example, there were 2 Imperial Guard codexes in 3rd edition. There were 2, I think there were 2 versions of the Dark Eldar codex. But anyway, so the codexes were a bit more slick. That said, some of the codexes didn't get updated until 5th edition. So some of the codexes that I will be using are from 3rd edition because those are the ones that were current. So that's it. Without further ado, I hope that satisfactorily explained why I'm doing 4th edition. I found it a lot of fun. Let's take a look at what we're doing today. Which actually, yeah, brings me on to another reason why 4th edition. 4th edition has got loads of different ways to play. You've got the main core battle rules, but they also did a combat patrol set of rules, which is on a 4-foot by 4-foot table, and had a unique force organisational chart, in as much as there wasn't really a force organisational chart. You had to take a troops choice, and then there were restrictions on what you couldn't take. You don't have to take a HQ choice, and when we look at the Chaos Space Marines, I'll explain why I think they made that optional. But yeah, it's a 4 foot by 4 foot table, 400 point limit, and yeah, it had its own little set of rules. So it's just a single mission, and it's basically kill each other. So now let's move on and look at the combat patrols I've got for this game. So here we have my combat patrol of Death Guard. Now in 4th edition, Death Guard are Chaos Space Marines with the Mark of Nurgle. And the Mark of Nurgle gives a Chaos Space Marine +1 toughness, so they've gone from toughness 4 to toughness 5. Now, in 3rd, 4th and 5th edition, and probably 6th and 7th, I never actually played 6th and 7th, there is this thing called instant death, where if you are hit by a weapon whose strength is double your natural toughness, it kills you outright, with no saving throw allowed, regardless of how many wounds you've got as well. So if you've got a multiple wound model, like a 3 wound Chaos Champion, Chaos Lord, it will kill you outright with 1 blow. Now, upgrading with Mark of Nurgle to make you toughness 5 still makes you count as toughness 4 for the purposes of instant death. So even though these guys are now toughness 5, if they're hit by a weapon that's toughness strength 8, it will still wipe you out regardless. So the other thing that Plague Marines have, because Plague Marines are a specific entry in the Codex, I'm using the 4th edition Chaos Space Marine Codex, but these guys are also fearless, so they will automatically pass any morale checks they need to make and leadership tests, and they really are disgustingly resilient because they've got the Feel No Pain ability. And in 4th edition, Feel No Pain was on a 4+. So we can shrug wounds off on a 4+. That said, it doesn't work against anything that won't allow an armor save. There are some weapons for which there's no armor save allowed. And it doesn't work against instant death. But here we've got, because of Nurgle, 2 units of 7 Plague Marines. The one on the left, we've got a melter gun and a plasma gun. And the one on the right, couldn't afford the points for another melter gun, so we've just got a plasma gun in that one. So that comes to 392 points. As I say, it's a 400 point limit for combat patrol. And yeah, 2 units of 7 Plague Marines, nearly 200 points each. Yeah, I think they're quite a bit cheaper than that now, points wise. So there's no HQ choice in this. Both of these count as troop choices. The reason being, one of the limitations in combat patrol is you can't have any units that have got a wounds characteristic of 3 or more. Every HQ choice in the 4th edition Chaos Codex has a wounds stat of 3 or more, so no HQs. So that's why part of me thinks that's why when they made the combat patrol, they made HQs optional, strictly just for Chaos Space Marines. So that's Chaos Space Marines. Let's take a look at their opponents. And here we have a combat patrol from the craft world of Iandin, the Eldar craft world of Iandin. Iandin, I pronounce it both ways, so don't hold me to one particular pronunciation. Now, we are being led in this combat patrol by a Spirit Seer. A Spirit Seer is a warlock who has been upgraded. Now, this list in particular is quite interesting in order to actually build it. So, like I say, typically in combat patrol, you can't have any models that has got a wounds characteristic of 3 or more. So that means you can't take a Farseer, because a Farseer has got a wounds characteristic of 3. In the 4th edition Eldar Codex, the only way you can take Warlocks is by taking a Farseer. So no Farseer equals no Warlocks. So we've got this particular Spirit Seer who is a Warlock, because if you take Wraithguard, you can take a Warlock to be upgraded as a Spirit Seer to go with them. So that's how come we've got a Warlock in this list. Right. In terms of his Warlock powers, I've given him Enhance, which gives the Warlock and his unit +1 weapon skill and +1 initiative. And for those of you who aren't familiar with initiative, it's one of my favourite parts of these old rules, because it really takes care of this whole palaver of who fights first. There's a number, and you start at 10 and you work your way down. So if you've never come across the initiative mechanic before, maybe you've seen Horus Heresy, they still use that mechanic in Horus Heresy, but if you've only ever played the more recent editions of 40k, it might not mean anything to you. If you've been watching, say, Hi Paul in the Warhammer the Old World, they use initiative in that as well. So yeah, +1 initiative, +1 weapon skill. The Wraithguard themselves are armed with a Wraith Cannon. It's the only thing they could be armed with in this edition of 40k, and Wraith Cannons are quite nasty. Desperately trying. I've got my fingers in 3-4 different parts of the book to read this out. So before I talk about Wraith Cannons, because I'm desperately trying to find the entry in the Codex that talks about Wraith Cannons, do I tell you about the Dire Avengers? Because I've got my finger in the Dire Avengers. That sounds really rude. I've got my finger in the entry of the Dire... No, that doesn't sound any better. Wraithguard, here we go. Wraith Cannons. And they've got 12-inch range, strength X. Okay, so Wraith Cannons always wound on a roll of a 2+, and on a wound roll of a 6, it inflicts instant death. So we just talked about that with the Death Guard. So you can't make a feel no pain against an instant death shot, regardless of the toughness value of the opponent. Against targets with an armour value, a Wraith Cannon always inflicts a glancing hit. So this is talking about vehicles, so you don't need to know this because we're not using any vehicles. But if there were vehicles, glancing hits are always hit on a roll of 3 or 4. Penetrating hits are always on a 5 or 6. So yeah, quite nasty. They've only got one shot. They are assault weapons, so you can move and fire with them. Short range, 12 inches. AP 2, so could even kill a Terminator. So yeah, really nasty weapons. We've got a unit of Dire Avengers, and you know what? I took my finger out of the Dire Avengers, so I don't know where they are now. There we are, Dire Avengers. The Exarch has got an extra Shuriken Cannon, and I've given him 2 Exarch powers, Blade Storm and Defend. So with Blade Storm, Dire Avengers empty their weapons in a devastating hurricane of bladed discs. The Exarch and his squad may choose to add 1 to the number of shots they fire with their shuriken weapons that turn. If they do so, they may not fire in the subsequent shooting phase as they reload. But shuriken catapults are Assault 2, 18-inch range, Strength 4 with AP 5. AP 5 means if you've got an armour save of 5+, it'll just shred straight through it. The other Exarch power he's got is Defend. The Exarch leads his squad in a complex pattern of parries and dodges designed to avoid enemy blows. Enemy models directing their attacks towards the Exarch squad lose 1 attack in each assault phase to a minimum of 1. Okay, so that's the Dire Avengers. And then finally, I need to find the entry for the Guardian Defenders, but basically it's a standard Guardian squad and they've got a missile cannon. Missile cannon? Missile launcher. So the missile launcher has got 2 different shots, crack and plasma. So crack is strength 8, so that will do instant death to a plague marine. Or plasma, which is strength 4, AP 4, with blast and pinning. So blast means it's an area effect weapon, and pinning means you might not be able to move. You'd have to take a leadership test afterwards, I believe. So I think that's everything you need to know about the Eldar. It comes to just shy of 400 points. Right, let's get set up and let's start playing Warhammer 40,000 4th edition Combat Patrol. First things first, we need to do a roll-off, and the winner of the roll-off will get to choose which deployment zone they use and also gets to place the first unit, and you then alternate placing your unit until both sides are deployed. So, in case you can't guess, the yellow dice are going to be for Craftworld Yanden, and the slimy green dice are going to be for the Death Guard. So, Craftworld Yanden will get to choose their deployment zone and place the first unit. Okay, we're set up. I didn't want to talk you through the backwards and forwards of each unit placement, but the Eldar started by placing that Guardian unit in the centre, because there's good lines of fire, and in 4th edition, as much as any other edition, large line of sight blocking terrain is good. That said, yeah, there are a couple of open areas. Quickly talk about the terrain. Most of it is impassable, so all of these rocks and trees will be impassable. The fallen trees, they're going to be linear obstacles, so they will give you cover if you are on the other side of it and you get shot at, and if you want to jump over it, it's going to be classed as difficult terrain. And then we've got this patch here, so this rocky bit here, you can traverse through that, but again it will be considered difficult terrain and will give you a cover save. So back to deployment. Yeah, Eldar Guardian Squad deployed in the centre. We've got the Wraith Guard on their left flank, our right as we look at it, and then on their left flank, ducking under the light, we've got the Dire Avengers holding their other flank. And then for the Death Guard, we've simply got two squads who are zooming the wrong way on the camera. Yeah, on either side of this big rock in the middle, hoping to advance forward and engage the Eldar. So all that remains now is to do another roll-off to determine who gets the first turn in the first battle round. Right, this is going to be slightly embarrassing because I've been stripping paint off old metal minis, and even though I was wearing gloves, when you're using acetone-based nail varnish remover, it melts gloves, and yeah, I've got paint on my finger and my thumb. Anyway, roll off to see who goes first. Obviously, same again, yellow for Eldar, green for Death Guard. Eldar get to choose whether to go first or second, and I think the Eldar want to go first. They have sighted the enemy and they want to try and pick one off from range with their missile launcher, and also possibly get those Wraith Guard moving a bit closer. Now in 4th edition you've only got 3 phases: movement, shooting and assault. So we're going to go into the Eldar movement phase. We are at the end of the Eldar movement phase. The Guardian Squad has advanced, or rather moved. It's moved. In this game, this version of the game, pretty much everything moves 6 inches, regardless of race. So yeah, that's interesting. If you look at Nurgle Terminators, they can move 6 inches, but Eldar Guardians also move 6 inches. Now, in 4th edition, if you have a heavy weapon and you move, you can't fire it at all. So it's not like more recent editions where you simply get a modifier to your hit roll. No, 4th edition, 3rd and 4th and 5th. If you move with a heavy weapon, you cannot fire it. However, because it's mounted on a weapon platform, it counts as an assault weapon, which means you can move and fire. And the veteran Eldar players out there, when I was talking about this unit having a warlock leading it, you can also do that with Guardians. So I could have put a warlock in this unit of Guardians as well, but I didn't. So the other thing I didn't mention about Wraith Guard, which again veteran Eldar players are probably screaming at me, is they have, I think it's called Wraith Sight. Basically, if they didn't have the warlock with them, or they weren't within 6 inches of a psyker, at the start of the turn you roll a dice, and on a roll of a 1 they can't do anything. But I don't really feel the need to mention that, even though I've just mentioned it, because they do have a psyker with the unit. So anyway, these guys have moved. It's an assault weapon, so they can still fire, but it will just be the missile weapon shooting, because the shuriken catapults on the Guardians are only 12-inch range. These guys have moved as well, but again, nothing in range. And the Dire Avengers have come the other way around the rock, hoping to head towards that fallen tree. Now, Eldar have got the fleet special rule, specifically fleet of foot. Fleet basically means in the shooting phase, you can move an extra d6 inches instead of shooting. So that's what the Dire Avengers are now going to do, because we are now in the shooting phase. So they will roll a d6. That's 5, so they can move another d6 inches, and that would ignore any penalties for moving through difficult terrain. But for now they're just going to move another 5 inches. So they've moved those extra 5 inches, and now onto some proper shooting. So the missile platform is going to fire a crack missile over at the Death Guard, and you draw line of sight from one of the 2 crew that are assigned to operate it. So I'm going to go with this guy, because he's not holding a shuriken weapon, whereas the other guy who looks like it could be a crewman is. Basically, the platform needs to have 2 guardians assigned to it to fire it, and one of them can fire the platform and the other one can fire the regular shuriken weapon. So that guy has got clear line of sight through to the Death Guard. They will hit on a 4+. That is a hit, and these are strength 8, toughness 5, so this will wound on a 2+, because it's not like the more recent editions where it's plus or minus 1 depending on comparison of, just trust me, it's a 5+, 2+ rather, and that is a wound. Now, like in more recent editions, Death Guard and other power armour equipped troops have got an armour save of 3+, however a crack missile is AP 3. Now, it's not like more recent editions where you subtract that from the wound roll, so they would get a 6 save. In this edition, it's if it's AP 3, it means it goes through anything that's armour 3+. Which means they don't get a save, and because, as I explained in the introduction, it's strength 8 versus natural toughness of 4, you get +1 to it for being Mark of Nurgle, but yeah, it's double than 4, so they don't get a save, and they can't make a feel no pain. So that is a dead Plague Marine. In 4th edition, you have to remove casualties that are in line of sight of the firing model. So I've taken that guy who was there. It's just a regular Plague Marine with a bolter. Right, that's the end of the Eldar turn, because there's no assaulting because they're not close enough. So on to Death Guard, turn 1. Both squads of Death Guard have moved forwards, they're 6 inches. And they are equipped with rapid fire weapons, but unlike in more recent editions, if you've got a rapid fire weapon, the range is 24 inches, but if you move, you can only fire 1 shot at up to 12 inches. So they're not going to be able to engage at with ranged weapons. But yeah, this squad is heading towards this broken ground here to get some cover. And this unit that just lost one of their teammates, comrades sounds rubbish, comrades, is heading towards that fallen tree in an effort to gain some cover, but I don't think they're going to get there before they come under more firepower, more fire from those guardians. Speaking of which, moving into Battleground 2. So the Eldar are having similar ideas to the Death Guard. So the unit of Dire Avengers has moved towards that fallen tree, and over here the Wraith Guard want to head towards the Death Guard. Wraith Guard, Death Guard, there's lots of guards, and they're going to want to head through this difficult terrain. Now in 4th edition, if your movement would take you into difficult terrain, which this will, because they're only like 2.5–3 inches away from it and they can move 6 inches, you roll 2d6, pick the highest, and that is your movement distance. And you do that when you start to move, knowing that it will take you into difficult terrain. And if you don't roll high enough to enter the terrain, then tough, that's as far as you move. So 2d6, so there's a 5. So they can move 5 inches in total, including going through the difficult terrain. And there they are, they've moved into the difficult terrain. Now, those Wraith Cannons they're carrying are assault weapons, which means they can still move and shoot at the Death Guard, and I've just measured up, and the Death Guard are in range of the Wraith Cannons. It's a bad day to be a Death Guard, apparently. Yeah, so we're going to have another missile shot from the missile platform here. That's going to go into that unit this time, as are the Wraith Cannons from the Wraith Guard, and the Dire Avengers are going to finish getting into their optimal position behind this log, thereby kind of denying it to the Death Guard, he says, desperately reaching for a dice, because they are going to be fleet of foot and move another 3 inches. So the Dire Avengers have taken up their position behind the fallen tree. The missile platform is going to fire into that unit Death Guard with 1 shot. I'm using the wrong dice, which will hit on a 4+. That's a hit. Will wound on a 2+. That's a wound, and again that's a dead Death Guard because AP3, armour value 3+, AP3 goes straight through it, and because it is double the natural toughness, the strength of the weapon is double the natural toughness of the Death Guard, that is instant death, so no feel, no pain. No feel, no pain. Yeah. Coming around to this side of the table to do the shots from the Wraith Guard into the Death Guard. This will be 4 shots from Wraith Cannons. They will be hitting on 3+. That's only 2 hits. Wraith Cannons automatically wound on a 2+, but 6s will be instant death. That's an instant death, that's a wound. And the wound is at AP2, so that cuts straight through the armour, but there will be, no there isn't an armour save, there will be a feel no pain for that one, because it's strength X, whereas that one is instant death. So let's take you off as instant death, and this will be a 3-up armour save. No it won't, it will be a 4+ feel no pain, there is no armour save. So 4+ feel no pain, otherwise another one dies. No, that's another dead one. Because another thing to mention is Death Guard in this edition, 1 wound only. In fact, all Space Marines, regardless of Imperial or Chaos alignment, are 1 wound only. So that's another dead Chaos Space Marine, another dead Plague Marine. Now, most units at this point would now have to take a morale test because they've lost more than 25% casualties to shooting, but Death Guard are fearless, so they don't have to take any morale tests, or technically the way it's worded is they will automatically pass it, so there's no point in taking it. And with that, that is the end of Eldar turn 2, probably much to the relief of the Death Guard. Right, so moving on to Death Guard turn 2. Let's see if they can take out some Space Elves. This unit of Death Guard on the right of their flank are going to try and move into that cover. Now, in 3rd edition, you could give Chaos Space Marines veteran skills, one of which is move through cover, which if you've been playing Death Guard in 8th edition, they could basically move through difficult terrain unimpeded. They can't do that in this edition, and you can't give them move through cover, which would allow you to roll 3d6 and pick the highest. So they're just rolling 2d6 and picking the highest. So that's 5 inches. They can move 5 inches in total, including into the cover. Now, when they're in cover, a cover save will effectively give them a pseudo-invulnerable save, because cover saves ignore the AP value of the weapon that's being fired at them. The other unit on the other flank has continued marching towards the Dire Avengers, cowering behind that fallen tree. And at this stage, well, not quite at this stage, I've got a decision to make, because they can either fire, with their rapid fire weapons, they would still be able to fire 1 shot at 12 inches. So we could shoot at those Dire Avengers, and the multi-melter in there, sorry, not multi-melter, the melter gun in there is an assault weapon, so that can still move and fire. The plasma gun is a rapid fire weapon, so that can fire 1 shot at 12 inches. Or we could think about assaulting them in the assault phase, so basically charging them in modern parlance. I might do that just to see how the assault rules work, or rather to show you how the assault rules work. I know how the assault rules work, which is why I'm reluctant to do it. I think they'd be better off shooting the elves. So we're going to make that decision in a moment. Let's move over here, where these guys are definitely going to shoot at the Wraith Guard. Right, we're going to start things off with the plasma gun. So at this range, and because they've moved, they're going to get one shot, or rather he's going to get one shot, which will hit on a 3+. That's a hit. It has the gets hot special rule, which basically means if I'd have rolled a 1, then he'd have taken a wound and would have had to make an armour save to see if it killed him. Interestingly enough, the way gets hot works in this edition is if he'd have fired 2 shots, then 1s and 2s would have been gets hot shots and would have had to make armour saves because of those. But that's irrelevant. So this is strength 7 on a plasma gun against toughness 6, so this will wound on a 3. That doesn't wound. Okay, that was their best chance of taking out a Wraith Guard. Right, we've got 3 bolter shots, so 1 from each one, because again, moved. Rapid fire, 1 shot at 12-inch range. Hitting on 3s, that's all 3 hit. Now, for the tricky bit, these are strength 4 against toughness 6. Now, in modern day 40k, that would be wounding on 5s, but in this version of 40k, it's wounding on 6s. If the thing is 1 difference, you're wounding on 5s. If it's more than 1 different, you're wounding on 6s. So we're looking for 6s. No wounds. So that's that bit of firing done with. Right, over here I've decided I am going to shoot this turn. Right, so there is a plasma gun in there. It's moved, so 1 shot, which will hit on a 3. That's a hit. Strength 7 against toughness 3. This will wound on a 2. Yeah, and that's AP 2, so ordinarily that would cut straight through an Aspect Warrior's armour, but they are in cover behind a log, and a log will give a cover save of, he says, just desperately checking back at the book, I want to say 4+, 5+. Yeah, pipes and logs, 5+ cover save. So this is not modified by AP in any way. That's a dead elf. Sorry, I know fans of Eldar are quite passionate creatures, so some of you might be getting upset by me saying dead elves. That's a dead Eldar, but it just feels a bit satisfying seeing as so far the Death Guard have been shot to pieces. Just so you know, my Eldar and my Death Guard are very old enemies. If ever I'm trying a new version of a game, I tend to break them out first because they're amongst my biggest collections. So yeah, they do fight each other quite regularly. Right, Melter Gun into Eldar, Dire Avengers. Will hit on a 3. That's a 5. Not very good at pointing this camera. Will wound on a 2, because strength 8. That's a wound. And again, ordinarily would go straight through the armour, but behind the log, 5+ cover save. That's another dead Dire Avenger. See, I said Dire Avenger that time. Finally, we've got 4 bolter shots going in, hitting on 3s. That's only 1 hit. Strength 4, toughness 3 will wound on a 3. That's not a wound. Right, so those Dire Avengers have now taken more than 25% casualties from shooting, which means they need to make a leadership test. So to take a leadership test, we roll 2 dice, 2d6, add the 2 together, and it needs to be equal to or less than the leadership value of the unit. Dire Avengers got a leadership value of 9, which is quite high. I think 10 is the highest. So they're very disciplined Dire Avengers because they are Aspect Warriors after all. So 2d6, and that's a 5. I should also have pointed out, if they were below 50% of their starting strength, it would have been -1 to the leadership, but they're not, so it's still leadership 9. And that's a pass, so they just basically stay put. And that is the end of Death Guard turn 2, so that's the end of Battle Round 2. Moving on to the start of Eldar turn 3. Right, we're at the end of the Eldar movement phase, and again, for those of you who've only ever played the more recent editions of 40k, like 8th, 9th and 10th, you may have noticed there's no command points and no stratagems. That's quite deliberate. That's because they just simply didn't exist then. So, it's, again, one of the reasons I quite like this rule set is when you're doing solo games, there's a lot less to remember. However, on that note, one thing I did forget was so far that missile launcher has fired at this unit and it's fired at that unit. And what you're supposed to do in 4th edition is you're supposed to fire at the nearest enemy unit unless you take a leadership test. Then you can fire at a unit that's further away than the nearest unit. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it really matters. Tell you what, let's just quickly see. There you go, that's just a pass for the Eldar Guardians. They are leadership 8, so everything's nice and hunky-dory now, so they could have fired back then. Surprised Zinch didn't say, no, you forgot it, you cocked up, tough, but there we go. Right, into the shooting phase then. Let's start with... I think this is going to go really badly for the Death Guard. Let's start over here, because this is the bit that's most likely to go really badly for the Death Guard. The Wraith Guard shooting into these Plague Marines. Right, 4 shots, hitting on 3s. That's 3 hits. Wounding on 2s, 6 will be instant death. That's 2 1s and a 4. So only 1, and that's not instant death. Now, they are now in rocky terrain, so they will get a cover save, which will be on a 4+. Ooh, drop dice don't count. That's a 1. And we will also get a Feel No Pain against this. That's a 2. So we've still got a dead Plague Marine. To be fair, that could have gone a lot worse for the Death Guard. Right, let's move over here. Now, because those Guardians have moved, all of their Shuriken Catapults are now in range of these Plague Marines as well. But I'm going to start with the Dire Avengers, who are going to do Blade Storm, so they all get an extra shot from their Shuriken Catapults. Right, so we've got 2 Dire Avengers armed with Avenger Shuriken Catapults, which are 2 shots each. The Exarch has got 2 Avenger Shuriken Catapults, so he gets 4 shots. It becomes Assault 4. And then because of Blade Storm, they get to add 1 to the number of shots they fire. It's not 1 per catapult, so the Exarch isn't getting 2 extra dice, he's only getting 1. Now, that said, I need to double check, because very often Exarchs are better at some things than just regular guys. Yeah, the Exarch has got a better ballistic skill. He's going to hit on 2+. So only 1 miss. And the other Dire Avengers are going to hit on 3s. And that 2 stays, because that's from the Exarch. 6s, I believe, are nothing special. That said, I'm just going to double check that, because you never know. Yeah, I was right, 6s are nothing special. Just wanted to double check they don't have rending or anything like that. Right, so these are going to wound on 5s because strength 4, toughness 5 because of Mark of Nurgle. And 6s are nothing special here either, other than being a wound. So that's just 2 wounds. These are AP 5, so the Plague Marines will get their full 3+ armour save, and they pass. So the Dire Avengers did no damage to the Plague Marines. In this edition, the way AP works versus armour value, I really like it. Basically, the AP needs to have a chance of actually penetrating the armour to affect the value that you need to roll, and I really like that. Moving on to the Guardians, I was tempted to do the plasma shot from the missile just to show you blast. But selfishly I'm not going to. I'm going to keep it simple and just fire another crack missile, try and kill a Plague Marine while they're in the open. So 1 shot which will hit on a 4 is a miss. So then we're on to all of the Shuriken Catapults, which are 2 shots each. They're Assault 2. So as I explained earlier, one of those guys is firing the weapons platform, so doesn't use a Shuriken Catapult. So he has already fired. That leaves 9 other guys who get 2 shots each. I say guys, there's some girls in there as well. Right, So this is 18 shots, and my hand has not magically got bigger. I am using smaller dice, because 18 dice of those big chunky dice, I can't hold them in one hand. So this is going to hit on 4s. That was only 5 misses, so 13 hits, wounding on 5s. So dice starting to average out a bit more, and only 4 wounds got through. So this will be 4 3+ saves, of which 3 are made, and a feel no pain on a 4+. The Death Guard survive. Look at that. Those guys truly are disgustingly resilient in this edition. More difficult to wound. The way AP works is they're more likely to survive, and they get to shrug things off with a 50-50 chance. Right, so I think the Death Guard got off very lightly there. They only lost 1 more Plague Marine in the Eldar's turn. So moving into Death Guard, turn 3. We're at the end of the Death Guard movement phase. Short version, they didn't move. We're going to try and pour fire into the targets. We're going to start with the squad on the left, their left, and they're going to see if they can finish off the Dire Avengers. Now, in this version, you cannot split fire. You have to concentrate all of your fire on a single target. Now, we've got rapid fire weapons in there. They stood still this turn, so they can fire 2 shots at up to 12-inch range. Alternatively, they could fire a single shot at up to 24-inch range, but they're stationary. They're going to shoot at the Dire Avengers. We're going to start with the plasma gun. So at this range, he gets 2 shots because it's rapid fire. 1s and 2s will get hot, hitting on 3s. Everything hits, nothing gets hot. This will wound on 2s. 2 wounds. 5 up cover save for being behind a log. 1 saves, 1 dead. Single shot from the multi-melter will hit on a 3. Misses. And then finally 8 shots from the combi bolter, not combi bolters, just regular bolters, because they're rapid fire. They shoot twice at 12-inch range because they remain stationary, hitting on 3s. That is 3 misses, so 5 hits. Wounding on 3s, strength 4, toughness 3. Everything wounds, so that's 5 wounds. Again, cover saves, or do they get armor saves? Because the armor save's better. Just a minute. Yeah, they can use their armor save because it's better than the cover save, because bolters are only AP 5. The Dire Avenger, the regular one, has got a 4-up armor save, and the Exarch has got a 3-up armor save. Both the plasma gun and the melter gun would have simply cut straight through that, because the plasma gun is AP 2, so would have cut through a Terminator's armor, and the melter gun is AP 1, so will cut through any armor of an infantry. That's why we applied the cover save for those 2 weapons. But bolt guns are only AP 5, so we don't have to take the cover save on these because their armor is better than a 5+. So I need to do these one at a time because of the different armor values on the Dire Avengers. So we'll start by taking them on the regular Dire Avenger, one at a time. So this will be a 4+ on the first one, 4-up armor. So he's dead, and the other 4 will all go onto the Exarch, who's got 3-up armor. 1, 2, 3 pass, but 1 does go through, and he has only got 1 wound. So that's the Dire Avengers taken care of. So the Dire Avengers have been taken out by the Death Guard shooting. Moving over onto this flank, we have got 2 shots from the plasma gun going into the Wraith Guard. These will hit on 3s again, but again gets hot on 1s and 2s. Nothing gets hot, both hit. Strength 7, toughness 6 will wound on a 3. That's 2 wounds. Now these are AP 2, which would ordinarily go through their armour, but they are in rocky terrain, so they will get 4-up cover saves. 1 passes, 1 fails, so that's a dead Wraith Guard. and then 4 shots from rapid firing bolters, which probably won't do as much like we saw last turn. So 4 shots will hit on 3s. Everything hit at least. Strength 4, toughness 6 is going to wound on 6s. So those 3 6s we just saw, we need them again. There's 1 wound. And again, they would get a 4-up armor save for being 4-up cover save for being in rocky terrain, but they get a 3-up armor save naturally, so they use the better of the 2, so they get to use their full armor save of 3+, which is a pass. Now, they haven't taken 25% casualties, but even if they had, they are fearless, so they would automatically pass. End of the Eldar movement phase. The Guardians have moved into behind that log where the Dire Avengers were. That's because when they're out in the open, they've got a 5-up armor save. Bolt guns are AP 5, so that would cut straight through the Eldar armor. At least if they move into cover behind the log, they'll get a 5-up cover save, which ignores AP. So they have moved in. All of the weapons are assault, so they can still fire. Over here, the Wraith Guard have stayed put. So it's turning into a bit of a static firefight, this one. And in case you're wondering, the combat patrol mission only lasts 6 turns, so we've still got 2 turns to go. And I hadn't expected this to turn into a ranged firefight. So I think what I'll do next time is choose some more melee-focused combat patrols, and yeah, we'll get a chance to see the melee in a bit more detail. Not because we haven't seen any detail at all so far. Anyway, Eldar shooting phase. Starting over here with the Wraith Guard, going into the 3 remaining Plague Marines on the right flank. The Plague Marines' right flank, that is. 3 shots hitting on 3s. 2 hits. Wounding on 2s. Only 1 wound. And we get a cover save of 4+ for being in rocky terrain. That is a fail, but we also get a feel no pain of 4+. That's a pass. So the Death Guard weather the storm of Wraith Cannons over on their right flank. Moving over to the unit of Guardians, again we're going to fire a crack missile out of the missile launcher. I could fire the plasma one for the blast effect, but it's only strength 4 against toughness 5. So we've got a much better chance of killing off a Death Guard completely, rather than having multiple chances of possibly maybe killing them off. So yeah, I think I'd rather fire the crack missile. So 1 shot will hit on a 4. That's a hit. Will wound on a 2. And that's a wound. So that will be a dead Plague Marine. Back to the dinky dice for the Shuriken catapults, hitting on 4s. That's a lot more misses this time round. Yep, only 4 hits, wounding on 5s. That is 2 hits. 3-up armor saves. Both pass. That will be the end of Eldar turn 4. Scratch that. For the purposes of demonstrating the rules, the Guardians are going to charge the Plague Marines. So, yeah, because they've moved and fired assault weapons, they can still assault. Like I say, those logs are going to be difficult terrain, so they will have to make a dangerous terrain test to see how far they can actually charge. Again, if you've only played the more recent versions of 40k, you don't roll 2d6 and move that distance. If this was perfectly flat terrain and that log wasn't there, you could just simply move flat 6 inches, up to 6 inches. In this case, because we're moving over difficult terrain, we have to make a difficult terrain test like we did with the Wraith Guard and the Death Guard entering that difficult terrain over there. So 2d6, pick the highest. 5 inches, that should get models into contact. So you move 1 model into contact, base-to-base contact with another, and then you move the rest their assault move. So after moving, it looks a bit like this, and the way this is going to work is any model in base-to-base contact, which that guy should be because he's the one to move first, any model in base-to-base contact gets to use their full complement of attacks. and then any model not in base-to-base contact but within 2 inches of an enemy model will get to make 1 single attack. So Eldar Guardians, I believe they get 1 attack each, but everybody gets 1 extra attack. I say everybody. Every unit in the game will get an extra attack for charging. So those in base-to-base contact will each get 2 attacks, their basic 1 plus 1 for charging, and anybody not in base-to-base but within 2 inches will just get a single attack. And the way this works is, in terms of who fights first, as I mentioned earlier in the introduction, the initiative stat comes into play. Eldar Guardians are initiative 1, Eldar Guardians are initiative 4. Mentally in my image I saw the capital I, which looks like a number 1. Guardians are initiative 4, Plague Marines are initiative 4. It's not like Warhammer the Old World where you get to add on up to 3 to your initiative for the distance you charge. No, it's just your basic initiative. So all of these attacks will be simultaneous. It won't be a case of one side fights first. We will obviously roll the dice for the Eldar first and then the Death Guard, but we won't remove casualties until all of the dice rolls for both sides of the attack have been made. So we've got 4 Guardians in base-to-base contact, so they will get 1 attack each because they're Guardians, and an extra attack each for being in base-to-base contact and charging. Of the other 6 Guardians, 1 of them is more than 2 inches away, so won't get to fight. I got this slightly wrong. I thought it was if it's more than 2 inches away from an enemy model, it didn't count as engaged, so couldn't make an attack. What it actually is it has to be within 2 inches of one of its own models, its own unit's models, that is within base-to-base contact. So it should have counted as being engaged, so it should have been able to make an attack. So the other 5 are within 2 inches of the target unit, so they will only get 1 attack each. Regardless of how many attacks they would have on their profile, they only get 1 attack each because they're not in base-to-base contact. Now we need to compare weapon skills between the Guardians and the Death Guard. So again, unlike more recent iterations of Warhammer 40k, it's not a standard to hit roll. You compare the weapon skill of the 2 units, you look it up on a table, and that will tell you what you're hitting on. The Guardians are weapon skill 3, the Death Guard are weapon skill 4, so the Death Guard have a higher weapon skill. But that means they're going to be hitting on 4s. Anybody who's played Old World or been watching, say, Hi Paul, and his Old World will be familiar with this, or if you played Horus Heresy, I think it's similar as well in that. But short version, these are going to be hitting on 4-ups. Can't even hold the dinky dice now. Right, that looks fairly promising. Yep, 6 hits out of with 7 misses. So now the tricky bit. Strength 3, because they're Eldar, against toughness 5. So wounding on 6s. There's 3 6s. 3-up armor saves. That one's cocked, but would clearly be a 5. So those all pass. So now the Death Guard are going to fight. I'm not going to say fight back, because it's fighting at the same time. The Death Guard are going to fight. Right, attack dice for the Death Guard. In base-to-base contact, we have got the champion, who gets 2 attacks. And there's a regular Death Guard, Plague Marine rather, in base-to-base contact. He gets 1 attack. All of the Plague Marines have got bolt pistols as well as close combat weapons. And in this edition, if you've got a pistol and a close combat weapon, you count as having 2 close combat weapons, so you can make an extra attack if you're in base-to-base contact. So the Plague Marine champion gets 2 attacks for being in base-to-base contact, plus an extra 1 because he's got a bolt pistol. He's got a pistol and a close combat weapon. The other Plague Marine in base-to-base contact gets 1 attack naturally, plus an extra 1 for having a pistol and a close combat weapon. The other 3 are within 2 inches of the enemy, and regardless of how many attacks they get and whether or not they've got pistols and combat weapons, they just get 1 attack each. Now, we already know the weapon skill. Their weapon skill is 4 against the Eldar's 3, so the Death Guard are going to be hitting on 3s because their weapon skill is 1 better than the Guardians. So hitting on 3s, that's just 3 misses. Strength 4, toughness 3, wounding on 3s, that is 3 wounds. There's no AP on these, they're just close combat weapons, and even if one of them was a plasma pistol, it would still be just be counted as a close combat weapon. So 3 wounds with 5 up armor saves for being Eldar Guardians. 1 survives, 2 die. And I think I'm right in saying you have to pull models away that are in base-to-base contact first. That's certainly how you do it in 3rd edition. I will just double check that's how you do it in 4th edition. Right, so 4th edition is slightly different to 3rd edition. In 4th edition, you could the player removing the casualties is free to remove them from any model that is engaged. So that's any model that is in base-to-base or within 2 inches. So in this case, we couldn't take that Guardian away at the back because he's not engaged. That's the one that was more than 2 inches away, so couldn't fight. So that one can't be removed as a casualty, but any of the others can. And it's the player's discretion as to which ones are removed. So let's take 2 Guardians away. And purely because it was convenient, I've taken the 2 away that were on this side. So one that was in base-to-base and one that was within 2 inches. Right, then we work out who won the combat. And again, this is a little bit like Old World, only much simpler. It's simply which side inflicted more wounds. Not more casualties, more wounds, because some models have got multiple wounds. So the Death Guard inflicted 2 wounds. The Eldar inflicted no wounds. Unlike the Old World, there's no battle standard bearers and rank bonus, and was it raining last Friday, and yeah, it's just simply who inflicted the most wounds. So the Death Guard won this combat. The next thing we do is the losing side takes a leadership test, and this is just a straightforward leadership test. They're leadership 8, we need 8 or less on 2d6. That's a 6, so they stay and fight, and effectively this fight is a draw. If they'd have lost, if they'd have failed the dice roll, they would have fled, or rather they would have fallen back, and that's when they start to move d6 inches and all the rest of it. So, but that's irrelevant. They pass the test, so effectively this combat is a draw. Right, so now we do pile-in moves, and again, those of you more familiar with modern 40k, pile-in happens at the start of the combat. In this edition, it happens at the end. And the player whose turn it is makes pile-in moves first. And what you have to do is move models that are not currently in base-to-base into base-to-base if you can. So initially, starting with the Eldar, and then when the Eldar have made their moves, the Death Guard make their moves, assuming that any of them might still not be in base-to-base contact. Right, so the rules say engaged in combat. So that guy was back there, he was not engaged. So he has to move 6 inches to become engaged. All of the other models are engaged, even though they're not in base-to-base. Likewise, the Death Guard, they are all engaged already, even though they're not all in base-to-base. So the Death Guard don't get to make any piling moves, but that is now, finally, the end of Eldar turn 4. So moving into Death Guard turn 4. There's something to note is in this edition, once you're in combat, you're there for the duration. And there are instances where you get, for example, I played test games where Plague Marines are locked in combat with an Eldar Wraith Lord Walker, which is toughness 8 and their strength 4. And in this edition, if a unit's toughness is double the attacking strength, you can't injure it. So what that meant was the Plague Marines just had to stand there and get squished by a Wraith Lord, because you cannot fall back out of combat. The only way you can leave combat is by failing that leadership test if you lose. So this is now one big melee until one side dies or runs away. Death Guard, turn 4. Starting over here with the ongoing firefight between these Plague Marines and the Wraith Guard. 2 shots, rapid fire from the plasma gun, getting hot on 1s and 2s. Both of those get hot. So the shots miss, and he might die. So he now needs to make an armour save. Even though this is AP2, he still gets to make his full armour save. So makes one, fails one, and I'm pretty sure we can still make a feel no pain against this, because it's not something that denies armour. So he passes the feel no pain and survives his plasma gun trying to overload. 4 bolt gun shots. I keep wanting to call them combi bolters. They're not combi bolters, that's the Terminators. 4 bolt gun shots, rapid firing into the Wraith Guard. All of them hit. Wounding on 6s. No 6s. Right, that's that side done. Now back over to here. It's the ongoing melee. Unlike modern editions 40k, you can't shoot pistols in combat. It's literally because the pistols effectively become part of your close combat weapons. So let's work out the attacks again. So all of these attacks are still going to be simultaneous because initiative is still tied. So we're going to do the Death Guard attacking first because it's their turn, but it will be simultaneous. As before, the champion gets 2 attacks plus 1 for having a pistol and a combat weapon, and he's in base-to-base contact, so he gets to make all 3. One of the other Plague Marines gets his 1 attack plus 1 for having a pistol and close combat weapon. The other 3 are not in base-to-base contact. No, I tell a lie. One of them is in base-to-base contact because of that guy who, the Eldar, who was outside of combat and then came in. He ended up in base-to-base contact with another. So another Plague Marine will get 2 attacks, 1 base, plus 1 for having a combat weapon and a pistol. So these will hit on 3s. And that is 3 misses. Point the camera at the dice, James. This will wound on 4 3s. Yeah, strength 4, toughness 3. 3s. That's 6 wounds. I don't want to use those dice because I counted them out for the number of attacks. So that's 4 of them, and we'll reroll another 2 for the other 2. 1 survives, so that's 5 dead Guardians, but they do get to fight before they die. So 8 attacks coming in first, because they get to fight before they die because this is simultaneous. Hitting on 4s, and that is 5 hits. Wounding on 6s, strength 3, toughness 5. No wounds. So again, the Eldar lost that combat, the Death Guard definitely won it. Maybe charging in Guardians against Death Guard was not a good idea. They should probably have stayed behind the log and just fired. Anyway. Right, I said earlier, after the last close combat, that it's just a standard leadership test for the losing side. At that time, that was true, but other factors now come into play because of the number of Eldar that are left. There's only 3 Guardians left. They've just lost 5 Guardians. So they are now below 50% of its starting strength, so that's -1 to the leaderships, and now leadership's 7. They are being outnumbered by their opponents by 2 to 1, so that's another -2. So that's they're now leadership 3. No, they're -3. They're leadership 5. 8 minus 3 is 5. That's what I meant to say. That's what I eventually said. Right. So they need to make a leadership test against leadership of 5. So they need 5 or less on 2d6. That is a fail, so they now need to fall back. So the Guardians need to fall back 2d6 inches, but before they do that, we need to see if the Death Guard make a sweeping advance. So what we do is we roll a d6 for the Guardians and add their initiative to it. Their initiative is 4. So 1, that's not looking good, that's 5. So now the Death Guard do the same. They roll a d6 and add their initiative, which is 4. And if this is equal to or exceeds the Eldar's roll, then the Death Guard basically run them down. So basically, the Death Guard automatically catch them. 3 plus 4 is 7, Nurgle's number. So the Death Guard catch the Eldar before they can fall back. So the Guardians are simply cut down, and the Death Guard then get a chance to make a consolidation move, which is a simple 3-inch move in any direction just to reform. So they've taken the opportunity to take a bit of a breather and move into the cover of that fallen tree, that log. So, yeah, it's looking a bit bare for the Eldar now. They were doing quite well at picking Death Guard off from range with the missile launchers. Definitely charging Death Guard was not a good idea. Yeah, note to future Farseer self. So going into the Eldar turn, I think we're just going to go straight into the shooting phase over here, and we'll continue this firefight, which is probably getting a bit boring and tedious now. But this is now turn 5, so there's 2 turns left. 3 Wraith Cannon shots coming into the Plague Marines over here. All 3 hit. Wound on 2s. That's an instant death. These 2 are cover saves of 4+. Make 1, fail 1. Feel no pain. No, so that's 2 of the remaining Plague Marines killed. So the Plague Marine with the plasma gun is left. We've gone into the Plague Marine's turn, the Death Guard turn. These Plague Marines have moved out from the log and are moving over towards the Wraith Guard. They are now within 12-inch range with the plasma gun and the melter gun, but they'll only get 1 shot with that particular plasma gun. Right, let's start with this Plague Marine, rapid firing his plasma gun into the Wraith Guard and see if his gun gets hot again. So 2 shots hitting on 3s. Yep, nothing gets hot this time. Wounding on 3s. 1 wound. This will be an a cover save of 4+, because AP2. That saves. There's 1 plasma shot from the team over on the left. Unit over on the left. Which hits, does not get hot. Will wound on a 3, doesn't wound. And then 1 melter gun shot, which will hit on a 3. And wound on a 2, strength 8, toughness 6. That's a wound. And again, this will have to be a cover save, because ordinarily if they weren't in cover, that would just simply melt straight through the Wraith Bone. That's a fail, so that's another dead Wraith Guard. In the final turn, the Eldar, the Spirit Seer has moved so that he can get his Shuriken pistol in range of this Plague Marine as well. Pistols in this game, if you stand still you get 2 shots, if you move you get 1 shot, but they're all 12-inch range. And let's see if we can't finish off this last Plague Marine with the last shooting phase of the Eldar's game. 2 Wraith Cannons, only 1 hits, wounding on a 2, that's a wound, 4+ cover save, that's a fail, 4+ feel no pain, that's a pass. So that Plague Marine does survive, but the pistol shot from the Spirit Seer, ooh, that was a 5, that's a hit. This is going to need a 6 to wound though, because it's only, no, it'll need a 3 to wound. It's a Shuriken pistol, strength 4, toughness 5. That's a wound. No, it isn't. It should have been a 5 to wound. That's clearly a 3, so should not have wounded. Yeah, because I was getting excited and carried away, and I just went straight into the return shooting from the Plague Marine down here. I didn't do the movement phase, so because of casualty removal, yeah, those Death Guard are too far away to shoot. And of course, that is not entirely accurate. The Plague Marine with the melter gun couldn't fire because he's only got a range of 12 inches. The others could all still fire because they've got rapid fire weapons. The plasma gun's rapid fire, so could have fired 1 shot at 24-inch range, and the bolt guns could fire 1 shot at 24-inch range. Right, the other possible field of existence where the Eldar fans are hoping that all of these shots are either going to be miss or that the Wraith Guard is going to tank them, and that plasma gunner is going to blow himself up, is now going to play himself out. Let's start with the plasma gunner. He's only going to get 1 shot because he moved. So this will be hitting on a 3. That's a miss, but it doesn't get hot. Sorry guys. Melter gun. Misses. I can hear all the Eldar fans cheering now. 3 bolter shots. 2 of them hit. These are going to wound on 6s. 1 wounds. 3 up armor safe for the Wraith Guard. Passes it. So there you go. In both spheres of existence, planes of existence, the Eldar do not get tabled. But that is the end of turn 6, so that is the end of the game. Now we need to work out victory points, because it's a victory point game. So the way victory points are worked out is it's based on the unit and their points value. If you completely destroy a unit or it falls back off the table, you get its full points value as your victory points. If you get it down to below 50% of its starting strength, you get half of its value as victory points. So the Eldar managed to reduce this unit of Plague Marines down to less than half its starting strength, which means they gain 96 victory points. The Death Guard completely wiped out the Dire Avengers, completely wiped out the Guardians, and reduced the Wraith Guard to less than 50%, which means the Death Guard get exactly 300 victory points. So it's a Death Guard victory. So that was Combat Patrol. I hope you enjoyed it, because I really had fun playing that. At first I thought, what if I let my Death Guard get into, because they were just getting picked off by that missile launcher, and as they got closer, those Wraith Guard were going to start insta-killing them. But eventually, yeah, they managed to get at the table, and some firefights started, and yeah, casualties started to fall on the Eldar side. So yeah, all in all, I thought that was quite interesting. Like I say, I'm going to do a few more of these because I'm really enjoying the format, and eventually I'll do some full battle scale engagements, some full battle games of 4th edition. But for now, I'm just going to do some combat patrol missions while I'm getting the hang of it. And next time I'll try to do some more melee-focused armies, some melee-focused combat patrols. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed it, like I say. Thank you very much for watching. Please continue to like, comment and subscribe, and until next time, God bless.